So you have probably seen this on some websites asking that your password should be in a specific format, like it should contain a symbol or at least one number, and it should be more than a certain number of characters. Well, in this video, I'll teach you how you can build a password validator with JavaScript. On my screen here, I have a simple page which has all the features of a good password validator. I will input some text so I can demonstrate it to you. When I need to see what I just entered, I just have to click this eye icon here and it reveals my password. If I click it again, it goes back to being a password. Next, I have 4 requirements or checklists that my password must meet. You can see that with my current password, it satisfies only 2 of the requirements. The length is more than 5 and it does not contain any spaces. I will add a number to meet the second requirement and it immediately turns purple. And the time symbol at the beginning turns to a check symbol, indicating that my password meets that requirement. If I delete the number, it turns back to red and the symbol turns back to a times. In order to save some time, I have already written the CSS of this project, so I'll take you through the HTML and JavaScript code only. Before we start, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you don't miss any new video uploads. Input an exclamation mark and press tab to generate the HTML boilerplate code. The title of my project is Password Validator. Next, I need to add a link to Fonts Awesome CDN because that's where I will be importing the eye icon, the times, and the check icons. I have the link in this text file, so I'll just copy and paste it here. Next, I will link my CSS and JavaScript files. Now, onto the body tag. First, I will create a div with class container. This div will contain all my other elements. A heading h2 with content password validator. Next is an input tag with ID password. Type of input should be password, and I'll give it a placeholder, enter password. Beside the input box should be the eye icon. So here's the Fonts Awesome tag for that. I tag with classes FAR and FAI. You can see the eye icon has appeared. Next is the counter, a div with class length. Within it, I'll type length with a column. And then I'll create a span with ID count. Within it, I'll input 0. Next up are the requirements. I'll create a div with class check1. In it will be the Fonts Awesome tag for the times icon. I tag with classes FAR and FA times circle. Then I'll create a span with text. Length should be more than 5. I will now copy and paste 3 times and just edit them. This should be check 2. Then the span content should contain at least 1 numerical character. Next one should be check 3. Then the span content should contain at least 1 special character. And then lastly, check 4 with span content should not contain space. So by default, the requirements indicate that they have not been met. They are in red and the icon shows times. That means we will use JavaScript to change them to purple and the icons to check, indicating that they have been met. This brings us to the end of the HTML. Let's move on to JavaScript. The first thing I need to do in my JavaScript file is to select all the HTML elements I will be manipulating. First is the input field with ID password, the eye icon, the span with ID count, which will give me the length of my password, and then the 4 requirements with IDs check 1, check 2, check 3, and check 4. So const input equals document.getElements by ID brackets open password. This selects my input field. I'll copy and paste this 6 times. Next is the eye icon, which does not have an ID. So I'll just go back to my HTML and give it an ID I. That means I comes here. Next is my count element, which will give me the length of my password. It has an ID count. The rest are for my 4 checks. Check 1, check 2, check 3, and check 4. Their IDs are check 1, check 2, check 3, and check 4. Next, I'll target the eye icon. I need it to change the password to plain text when it is clicked. That means I'll add an event listener. I.add event listener bracket opens. The event I'm looking for is a click, and then an arrow function comes in. This statement only means that anytime a user clicks the eye icon, this function should execute. So I'm not about to define a function. I want the password in the input field to change to plain text when it is clicked. So I'll target the input for that. By default, input type is set to password. So I'll tell JavaScript that if the input type is set to password, change it to text. I'll use an if statement for that. If input.type equals password, then input.type equals text. Now let's see if it's working. I will input a password and then click the eye icon. Okay, so as you can see, it works. But when I click it again, it does not change back to being a password. I can fix that by adding an else statement. Else, then curly braces, input.type equals password. Now I'll input a password, and when I click it, you can see it can now toggle between text and password. You see the color of the eye icon is gray. I can make it change to black when it is clicked, and then change back to gray when clicked again. Under the input.type, I'll just put i.style.color equals black. Then for the else statement, it should be i.style.color equals gray. Now you can see when I click the icon, it changes to black, and at the same time, the password changes to plain text. They also change back to the original forms when I click the icon again. Perfect. Next element to target is my counter. For that, I'll add an event listener to my input field. Input.add event listener brackets input, then an arrow function. This line simply means anytime a user enters something in the input field, this function should execute. I'm about to define the function. Input.value. This statement returns whatever password the user entered into the input field. I'll add the .trim function to remove any white spaces. In case the user entered some spaces before or after the password, the trim function will remove it. To return the number of characters entered, I'll just add .length. To make it appear, I'll just assign it to count.innerText. Let's see if it's working. I'll enter a password, and as you can see, the count element updates with every input that I make. Now let's move on to our 4 requirements. The first one says password should be more than 5 characters. That means if I enter more than 5 characters, I want the times icon to change to check and the color change to purple. I'll just say if count.innerText is more than 5, then curly brackets open. I'll target check 1, which is the first checklist. Now, in the index.html file, the times icon is the first child of the check 1 element, as you can see here. That means to target the icon, I'll say first element child. Next, I need to target the class list of the icon, so dot class list. Now, in order to change the times to check, I just need to replace this class FA times circle with FA check circle. So I'll add dot remove bracket opens FA times circle. To replace it, I'll repeat this line, change remove to add, and then instead of this, I'll change it to FA check circle. See if it's working. Yeah, so when I enter more than 5 characters, you can see that the icon changes to a check. But when I remove the password, the check icon remains, but I need it to change back to a times icon. That means I need to add an else statement. Else, then curly braces. The else statement is just the opposite of this, so I'll just copy and paste these 2 lines. Change this to check, and then this to times. I also need the line to change to purple when it checks true. With that, I'll come below this and say check1.style.color equals purple. And when it checks false, it should change back to red. So check1.style.color equals red. Now, when I enter more than 5 characters, the icon changes to check and the color changes to purple. The opposite happens when I remove my password. Now, we will be repeating these commands for the rest of our checklist. So to make things simple, I'll convert this to a function. I'll come down here and I'll create a function and name it check true. Which will take a single parameter check. I'll just cut this statement and paste it here. I'll create another function and name it check false, which also takes a single parameter check. I'll cut the else statement and paste it here. I will also remove the one here to make it general. That means the function will work for all the other checklists. Over here, I will call the function check true. It will take check 1 as an argument. And for the else statement, I will call the check false function and input check 1 as an argument. Now we'll move on to the second checklist, which is the password should contain at least 1 numeric character. I need this to check true when there is at least 1 number in my password. For that, I'll input if input.value.match bracket opens slash square brackets 0 to 9 slash again and then I. This is what we call regular expressions or regex. This statement means if any of the characters in the input.value element matches any number from 0 to 9. The I here makes it case insensitive. I will open curly braces and then call my check true function. It will take check 2 as an argument. And then the else statement will also call the check false function and then take check 2 as an argument. I will now enter a number in my input field. And as you can see, the second checklist is also working. If I remove the password, it goes back to default. Next, we move to the third checklist, which is should contain at least one special character. That is symbols like a hash, hyphen, underscore, colon, and the others. This is also going to use the same match function as the previous requirement, but it's a little tricky, so pay attention. If input.value.match bracket opens slash open square brackets caret symbol capital A to Z small a to Z 0 to 9 and then space slash again and then I. So this caret symbol means negative or missing. That means with this line, we are telling JavaScript to return any character that is not an alphabet upper and lower case, a number 0 to 9, or a space. That means any character that is not any of what I have defined in this line is automatically a special character or a symbol. Let me append my functions and try to see if it's working. The moment I enter a question mark, the third requirement checks true. If I remove it, it checks false. So it checks true because a question mark is neither an alphabet, nor a number, nor a space. We move to the final one, which is rather simple. It says that my password should not contain a space. Here we go. If exclamation mark input.value.match space, then I will bring the functions. I will now enter a password. So you can see it checks true because there is no space. The moment I enter a space, it checks false. When I remove the entire password, it remains true even though the input field is empty. I can fix this by adding another conditional statement right here. And input.value exclamation equals empty. So now the statement reads, if the password does not contain any space and input field is not empty, then run the function below. I will enter a password once more so it checks true and then remove it. It goes back to being false. If you are still with me until this point, make sure you smash the like button. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Thank you for staying with me until the end, and I'll see you in another video.